Well, having been an inner city youth that was written off, so to say, you know, having spent 17 years in America and coming back and seeing the social issues that exist here, which are parallel with the social issues that exist in America, i.e. New York, you know, it was like it's a passion, but it was more of a cause to help, because I was blessed to have made it through, but many, you know, might not be so lucky. It's about people coming together, you know, with the youth, i.e. more the youth than the vulnerable adults, you know. We need help as a society, and I think if we take responsibilities as adults to step up and bring something to the table to help with the issues that exist, you know, it wouldn't be such a major problem. Oh. Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's been able to rapport, because with many of the youth, if they cannot rapport with you, they'll alienate you. You know, so it's been able that they can recognise that, well, they can recognise to where you're coming from, because you can relate to where they're at. And, you know, when dealing with youth, you've got to meet them where they're at. Yeah,
I'd agree. And in terms of vulnerable adults, I mean, then there are more complexities. The way in which you're working people with well-seeded issues, you know, that's something that obviously takes some kind of an art.
Right, again, you've got to meet them where they're at with the prospect of bringing about change. You know, the philosophies that we bring, we deal with perceptions, thoughts, beliefs, behaviour, from the prospect of bringing about change. So, you know, when you're trying to tell someone to change, when they're in that isolated place for them, right, you know, it's hard. So you've got to meet them where they're at, and then rapport with them, get their trust, and then eventually give them the option to change.
Okay. In terms of, like, if you like, trying to create some sort of a longer-term journey with them.
Right.
You're driving home a fair few heavy issues.
Right.
And you're putting into perspective a number of, I think, a number of fruitful outcomes. I mean,
right,
that reflects in general and in whole for the whole society.
Right.
We've had a number of sort of specific discussions about that.
Right.
Well, what exactly, you know, do you see as your core purpose, or at least the core issues that you wanted to address?
Now, I've seen how much has changed. You know, it's more of a melting pot. And socially, I don't think we're addressing the fact that it is a melting pot. There's so many different cultures, so there is a lot of frustration. Many of the youth, vulnerable adults, are not cognitively developed to deal with frustration. So therefore, you know, it can lead to antisocial behaviour. So that's why addressing issues of frustration, how to deal with frustration, will help, you know, for community cohesion.
Yeah, I'd agree. Cohesion's that word, right, isn't it?
Well, I mean, what we find is that being able to communicate, you know, because gang culture is about finding like-minded individuals, you know, because most of, again, we deal with the youth, they don't fit into mainstream society. Right. You know, so they find isolated people like themselves, who they can rapport with, who they feel they have something in common with. Understand? We all know that the gang culture doesn't lead to anything productive. So, you know, it's to meet them where they're at with that gang culture mindset, with the prospect of bringing about change, you know, where they can fit into mainstream society, thought-wise first, before, right, you can fit physically. And, you know, social networking websites, you know, they can be negative and positive. It's what your objective is, you know, because the masses are there to be reached. Right. But it's to put a positive, a meaningful, positive idea out there. When I first did my degree, I started off in an online college. Where I was state of mind was isolated myself, right, you know, so in starting off with an online college, that kind of got me out mixing with people, even though it was virtually. But then eventually I ended up finishing the degree in an actual college located in New York City. So to an extent, what I'm bringing to the table is like life skills, which I've gone through myself, you know, some being the wayward youngster, you know, being isolated, or the thought of being isolated, and then transforming into, like, now bringing back to the table, like, I'm going to give that to other people, how I went through my process.
Right, fair comment. And I mean, look, it stemmed, didn't it, from Brixton. You've worked and you've been living in New York.
Right.
You've gone across America. You've seen some pre-war things.
Right.
You've got first-hand experience of that. Now unpacking that into the
Right.
cultural challenges of today
yeah.
and addressing that in a way that is actually very, it's not necessarily unique, but it's very pertinent in terms of you having the strength, the courage to sort of change and face those cultural
Well, it's important to be able to relate. So having that background, it makes it easier for me to relate to disadvantaged youth and vulnerable adults, you know?
Yeah, okay.
Because, you know, empathy is something you can show because you've been there yourself. You know, I myself had a bout of depression, so I can relate to that. And empathizing where they are, but then showing them the process you went through to make change. Then you're giving them the option, do you want to change? Because you kind of want for someone what they want for themselves. You know, so that could be depression, anxiety, anger management, the same kind of thing. Once someone has a belief that's where they're at, it's about them making a choice to make a change. You can say change, but unless they choose to change, there's nothing you can do about it. So again, it's like, you want to change? Well, here's options. Here's how you change. Look at someone who changed. Look at them now. You know, many of the youth, you know, are traumatized by events, the past and present, things that happen. People don't really look on them with a lot of aspects of anything good about them. Once that becomes a belief that, well, everyone thinks bad about me, I'm thinking bad about myself, it's hard to change a belief. You know, so where we come in now is like, listen, you don't have to have that belief. People's opinions of you, you don't have control over, but you have 100% control over your opinion of yourself. And it starts with what you feel and what you value.
Oh, okay, so to use a buzzword, it's about empowerment, really.
It's about empowerment.
And the right route through an educational...
Right. Because, as I said, the youth are future parents. You can't teach what you don't know. So if you have a youth that becomes a parent as an adult, or as a youth, that hasn't learnt how to express themselves, how they can express themselves to their children, then that can be something that becomes generational.
Right, it's just normal, doesn't it, that you work with young people and they do better.
Right.
You know, it's just a normal thing if you put the right sort of efforts in the right way.
Well, it starts with believing in them, you know, but you have to believe in them, you know, because it's hard to really teach someone to do better if they feel you don't believe in them. So the belief and the trust is what we need to show the youth, vulnerable adults, that helps gaining the rapport to bring about change. You know, because ultimately it's about social cohesion. You know, we live in a very diverse society now as opposed to how it was maybe 15, 20 years ago. And it seems like it's becoming even more diverse. So it's been able to understand, you know, that we are going to become more of a diverse society, and we need to step out of our comfort zone to learn and understand people of different religions, different races.
Yeah, you're right. That diversity, tuning into that and being focused on what it is that those particular instances, those particular challenges actually present as a sort of a hurdle to overcome.
Right.
I think that's the way in which the service gets defined, right?
Yeah, but hence the reason why we say one love. You know, it's about people coming together.
Right.